At my 72nd birthday, I overheard my daughter-in-law whisper, "She forgets everything now. Soon, so will the bank." I smiled, though my hand was shaking. They thought age had made me blind. But if there's one thing a filmmaker never forgets, it's how to frame a lie. The next morning I called my old director, the one who still believes in truth, and that was the day I started filming again. This time, the subject wasn't the world. It was my own family. You're watching the story of how I turned my own downfall into a documentary and my betrayal into evidence. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and for 72 years old, a widow, Emmy-winning environmental documentary producer, I have dedicated most of my life to making valuable documentaries to raise people's awareness of the environment. The night I received the Lifetime Impact Award should have been the most meaningful evening of my career. 50 years of chasing truth through a lens, 50 years of telling stories no one else dared to tell, and now the industry had chosen to honor me for it. The Avalon Theater in Los Angeles shimmered under spotlights, its golden arches gleaming like the past trying too hard to stay relevant. Reporters crowded the red carpet. Flashbulbs flared. Everyone kept calling me a legend. And yet, inside, I felt like an artifact, preserved, admired, but already shelved. I walked the same carpet I'd once sprinted down in my 30s, clutching film reels instead of trophies. Now my steps were slower, deliberate, rehearsed. Every flash that hit my face felt like a camera shutter closing on the final frame of my life. Backstage, the air smelled of lilies and nerves. Assistants rushed by with clipboards and earpieces whispering cues. My name echoed faintly through the intercom. "Ms. Hayes, you're on in 2 minutes." I smiled, adjusted the emerald brooch pinned to my gown, the one Andrew had given me for my 60th birthday. He'd told me it symbolized legacy. That word again. Legacy. A polite synonym for what's left when you're gone. As I moved past the heavy velvet curtains, I caught a glimpse of my son near the stage exit, his arm draped around Tessa's waist. They looked beautiful together, polished, camera-ready, the picture-perfect heirs of a cinematic dynasty. I was about to call out when I heard it. "She's just a brand to monetize before she dies," Andrew said, his voice calm, practiced, almost bored. "Once she's gone, the Institute's ours." Tessa's soft laugh followed, a laugh that used to fill my home with warmth. Now it sounded like glass breaking in slow motion. For a moment I thought I'd misheard. Maybe it was a cruel joke. But then I saw the way Tessa's hand tightened around his arm, her smile sharpening like a blade. They meant every word. My grip on the award envelope tightened. The metal edges dug into my palm. I stood there, frozen between the stage light and the shadow of their betrayal. The applause outside was growing louder, calling my name, but all I could hear was that sentence replaying in my head, syllable by syllable, like a ticking bomb. "She's just a brand. Before she dies. Ours." I should have turned away, walked out, collapsed. But 50 years in front of cameras had trained me too well. When your soul fractures, you still hold the frame. I straightened my back, fixed the mask, the public smile that had fooled audiences and critics for decades. And then, when the stage manager gestured for me to walk, I did. The spotlight hit me like a confession. Applause thundered. People stood. They clapped for the icon, the pioneer, the fearless voice of truth. No one noticed the tremor in my hand as I accepted the golden statuette from the presenter. No one saw the way my knuckles turned white around it. The speech I'd prepared vanished. Instead, words came out automatically, elegant, rehearsed, empty. "This award belongs to everyone who still believes stories can change the world." I said the lines they wanted to hear. The audience smiled. Tessa wiped a tear she didn't feel. Andrew nodded like a dutiful son, pride painted across his face like makeup applied too thick. The applause faded. The orchestra swelled. And as I lifted the award for the photographers, the flashbulbs exploded, each one capturing a version of me that no longer existed. Somewhere in that chaos of light and sound, something inside me cracked. Quietly, invisibly. Like an old film reel burning at the edges, the image still beautiful while it dies. When the ceremony ended, I stood alone near the back exit, the golden statue cold against my skin. Andrew was busy networking with producers, already introducing himself as director of the Eleanor Hayes Institute. He said it so smoothly, as if I'd already handed it over. Tessa kissed cheeks, smiled for selfies, her diamond earrings catching the light. I wondered if she'd chosen them to match the award she expected to inherit. I should have confronted them. I didn't. I simply walked to the alley behind the theater, heels clicking on concrete, Los Angeles glittering beyond the haze of smoke and camera flashes. For the first time in years, I felt small, not as an icon, not as a mother, but as a woman who'd built a world her own son planned to sell. I looked at the trophy again, the symbol of a lifetime of truth, and I realized something I should have known all along. Truth doesn't live in applause. It hides behind closed doors, whispered between the people you trust the most. That night, I sat in the back of the limo, watching my reflection blur in the tinted glass. Behind me, the city pulsed with light. Ahead of me, silence. She's just a brand to monetize before she dies. The words echoed again, softer this time, like a prayer from someone who'd already buried me. And as the car drove through the endless glow of Sunset Boulevard, I whispered the only thing I could. We'll see, because I wasn't done yet. The night after the gala, I came home with the award still in its velvet case. I placed it on the marble counter and stared at it under the dim kitchen light. It glittered like something holy, a symbol of a life's work. But inside these quiet walls, it looked more like an artifact, cold and distant, a souvenir from a woman who no longer existed. My home was once an Art Deco film studio, the place where I built my world. The floor still bore the faint scars of dolly tracks from the documentaries that defined my career. The walls were lined with photographs, glaciers collapsing, forests burning, people I'd filmed across 5 continents. Now they just watched me silently, like witnesses to a long, slow extinction. The house smelled faintly of dust and lilies from last night's flowers. For years, it had been my sanctuary. Now it felt like a museum curated by strangers. By morning, Andrew and Tessa arrived. They didn't knock. They rarely did anymore. Andrew carried a bouquet of orchids, the same kind from the ceremony. Tessa followed, camera already recording, her voice coated with sugar. "Mom, you forgot about the press brunch next week," Andrew said with that smooth managerial tone he used when talking to employees. I frowned. "Brunch?" Tessa gave a soft laugh. It's fine, Eleanor. You must have missed the emails. We'll handle it." She called me Eleanor, not Mom, not Mrs. Hayes. Just Eleanor. Andrew cleared his throat. "Dr. Keen's coming by next week, just to check your memory, nothing serious." "My memory?" I asked quietly. "You've been, distracted lately, forgetting little things." "It's just preventive care," he said, avoiding my eyes. I wanted to tell him I wasn't distracted. I was disappointed. "There's a difference." Tessa reached out, brushing my sleeve with rehearsed affection. "Everyone online loves how devoted Andrew is. They're calling him the perfect son. Perfect, a word that photographs well." Dr. Keen arrived that Friday. He looked polished, confident, the kind of man you trust because he seems incapable of doubt. He asked me to draw a clock, list 3 words, remember them later. I did fine. Not perfect, but fine. Still, he smiled with that gentle condescension doctors reserve for women past 70. "Just a mild cognitive supplement, Mrs. Hayes, to help with focus, completely harmless." Harmless. The first lie is always the kindest. The pills were small, white, chalky. At first, nothing changed. Then, slowly, the world began to fray at the edges. I started losing things. Keys, appointments, entire afternoons. I once drove halfway to Santa Monica before realizing I didn't know where I was going. Another time, I stood in my editing studio staring at a reel of film, unable to remember which project it belonged to. It was as if someone had placed a fog between me and my own life. Meanwhile, Tessa was thriving. She began live streaming snippets of our daily life. "Caring for Eleanor Hayes, the living legend," she said to her audience of 500,000. She smiled beautifully while spoon-feeding me soup I didn't need. The comments flooded in, hearts, praise, sympathy. "What a wonderful daughter-in-law," they wrote. "Such love, such devotion." Every video blurred the line between affection and advertisement. Every moment of my weakness became her content. She began redecorating my studio, claiming it was for accessibility. My archived film reels, 50 years of raw footage, disappeared into boxes. Andrew said they'd be digitized and preserved. I knew better. Preserved is what people say when they mean removed. The pills kept coming. Dr. Keen said they were working. That confusion was part of the adjustment. But confusion doesn't feel like fog. It feels like drowning while everyone else watches quietly. One morning, I missed an interview with Variety. Andrew stormed in, frustrated, but Tessa filmed his compassionate reminder for her followers. The clip went viral. I saw it later. Me, looking small and dazed. Andrew, the patient, loving son. The caption read, "Caring for our aging heroes isn't easy, but love remembers." I turned off the screen before the comments finished loading. A few weeks later, I lost my driver's license. Dr. Keene said it was for safety. Andrew began handling my finances for convenience. Tessa started scheduling my interviews, my meals, my life. They called it care. It felt like custody. Each morning, I'd wake to the soft sound of Tessa's voice. Not a greeting, but a performance. "Good morning, Mom. Your followers are praying for you." She'd say it to the camera, not to me. I'd smile anyway, because refusing to play the part would only make me look sicker. There's a special kind of horror in being turned into a story you didn't agree to tell. But stories were my territory, and I began to notice the inconsistencies, the things they didn't expect me to catch. The pill bottles that changed labels, the deleted messages on my phone, the moments when Andrew and Tessa spoke in whispers that stopped the moment I entered the room. One night, I caught Tessa deleting my call history. She froze, then smiled. "Oh, Mom. I was just clearing spam." Her voice was soft. Her eyes were knives. That night, I sat in front of the mirror, studying my own reflection. The face staring back was blurred, tired, slightly out of focus, like a photograph someone had overexposed. But behind that blur, something else flickered. A spark. Doubt. They thought they were documenting my decline, but I was documenting them. Every conversation, every look, every pill. And as the fog in my mind thickened, something else became painfully clear. I wasn't losing my memory. I was being erased. I began to doubt not my mind, but their motives. Nora had been with me for more than 3 decades. She was there when my name first appeared in the credits, when I won my first Emmy, and when my husband left because he couldn't live with a woman who worked too late and dreamed too loud. She was, in every sense, the last witness of who I used to be. That night, close to midnight, she knocked on my studio door, the kind of knock that carries hesitation, soft, deliberate, but urgent. When I opened it, she stood there clutching a small white pill bottle in both hands, her face pale beneath the yellow light. "I need to show you something," she whispered. She placed the bottle on my desk like a confession. Then, from her bag, she pulled another, nearly identical, except for one thing: the label. "This is what Dr. Keene prescribed," she said quietly. "And this," she pointed to the one from my nightstand, "is what you've been taking." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The 2 labels looked almost identical, but not to someone who'd spent 50 years analyzing film frames. The alignment was off, the font slightly smaller. The serial code had been reprinted. Nora continued, her voice trembling. "I checked the refill receipts, Mrs. Hayes. The prescription number doesn't match. My niece works at a pharmacy. She said someone tampered with the packaging. The pills inside are different." I opened the bottle, tipped one into my palm. It was faintly green, not white like before. A thin bitterness filled the air. "They switched them," Nora said. "I think they're changing your medication." For a long time, I just looked at the pill in my hand, the size of a lentil, harmless, ordinary. It's strange how something so small can carry the power to erase a person. I felt the weight of the silence between us. Then I said softly, "If they want me blind, Nora, I'll let them believe they've succeeded." Her eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," I said, my voice steady, "that the only way to expose a lie is to let it keep talking." That night we sat together in the dim studio, the old projector humming softly in the background. I hadn't used it in months, but its familiar rhythm steadied me. Nora began to tell me everything: how Andrew had insisted she label my vitamins differently, how Tessa often reorganized my medication drawer while live streaming her care routines. They thought they were careful. They forgot Nora was part of my world long before they arrived. She pulled a small envelope from her coat. Inside were photographs, blurry phone pictures she'd taken of the pill bottles, the changed dates, the pharmacist's receipts. Each image was a frame. Each frame was evidence. "If you go to the police now," Nora said, "they'll think you're confused. They'll say you're paranoid." "Exactly," I replied, "which is why I won't go, not yet." I took the real bottle, the one Keene had prescribed, and set it carefully on my desk beside the fake one. 2 identical containers, one truth, one poison, a perfect metaphor for the life I was living. In that moment, I made my decision. If they wanted to believe I was slipping, I would give them the performance of a lifetime. I'd been acting for the camera for 50 years. I knew how to appear fragile, how to forget just enough, how to tremble on cue. From that night forward, I began to pretend. I forgot small things, names, dates, the plot of my own films. I let Tessa record her little caregiving videos, smiled when she fed me lies, nodded when she called me Eleanor instead of Mom. Meanwhile, Nora started keeping a quiet log. Every pill change, every whisper, every transaction from Andrew's accounts. We installed a tiny voice recorder beneath my drafting desk, hidden in the wooden trim I'd designed myself. I was no longer the woman losing her memory. I was the woman collecting proof. Some nights, the act almost broke me. I'd look into the mirror and see the dullness I had perfected, the glassy eyes of someone half there, and then I'd see it, a flicker of clarity, the glint of anger. They want me to forget, I whispered to my reflection, but I will remember for the record. Before Nora left that night, she placed a hand on my shoulder, a quiet, steady gesture that said everything words couldn't. "Be careful, Mrs. Hayes," she said. "They think they're winning." "Good," I told her. "That's exactly what I want them to think." When she closed the door, the house fell into silence again. I sat alone under the projector's soft light, both bottles of pills beside me. In the darkness, I whispered to the machine, my oldest companion, "Roll camera." And from that night on, the director in me woke up. The film I would make next wasn't for theaters or awards. It was for survival. It took me 2 weeks to find a window of freedom. By then, Andrew had control of my calendar, my medications, even my transportation. Tessa managed my social appearances, smiling sweetly while uploading curated clips of my recovery journey. They thought they were watching me fall apart. They didn't realize I was watching them too. That morning, I told Tessa I was too tired for my wellness livestream. I waited until she left for Pilates, because perfect people always have Pilates. And then I called a number I hadn't dialed in years. "Patel Clinic," the receptionist answered. "Tell Dr. Mira Patel it's Eleanor Hayes," I said, my voice low but steady. "Tell her I need a private appointment, no records." Dr. Patel had been my physician for nearly 20 years before Andrew transferred my care to Dr. Keene. She was the kind of doctor who remembered your blood type and your favorite tea. She'd also been my friend once. When I arrived, her face changed the moment she saw me. "Eleanor," she said softly, "what's going on? You look like someone who finally stopped pretending," I finished. I placed both pill bottles on her desk, the real and the fake. Her eyes flicked between them, her brows tightening as she read the labels. She didn't ask permission. She simply stood, took them to the back lab, and told me to wait. The clock ticked for 40 minutes. The hum of the centrifuge echoed through the thin walls. When she came back, her face was pale. "Eleanor," she began carefully, "these pills contain a compound called scopolamine hydrobromide, combined with a benzodiazepine derivative. In controlled doses, it causes confusion, drowsiness, memory loss, sometimes even mild paralysis." My hands didn't shake. I just stared at the white tablets in the small glass dish, gleaming under the fluorescent light. "How long?" I asked. "Weeks, maybe months," she said. "It's cumulative. You've been under a mild form of chemical sedation. This isn't dementia, Eleanor, it's poisoning." There it was, the word I'd known all along but hadn't dared to say aloud. Poison. For a moment, I felt a strange calm, almost like relief. When you spend long enough doubting your own mind, confirmation feels like mercy. Dr. Patel leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You need to go to the authorities. This is criminal." "Not yet," I said. "Eleanor, if I confront them now, they'll cover their tracks. I need them comfortable. I need them careless. I need proof no lawyer can dismiss." She looked at me the way one might look at a patient who's already crossed the line between rational and dangerous. "You're talking about baiting them." "I'm talking about filming the truth," I corrected. I slipped the pills back into the bottle and capped it. The sound was sharp in the quiet room, like a trigger being cocked. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Exactly what I've been doing," I said. "I'll take their poison. I'll smile for the cameras. I'll forget on cue. And while they celebrate my decline, I'll be building their confession." Dr. Patel hesitated, then scribbled something on her notepad. A personal cell number, her home address. "You'll need medical supervision if the symptoms worsen. Don't trust anyone else. Call me, day or night. I nodded, slipping the note into my coat pocket. Her hand lingered on mine as I stood to leave. You're not alone in this, she said. No, I replied, but they need to think I am. That night, I returned home just as Tessa was finishing another of her soft focus videos. The two of us on the couch, her arm looped through mine, pretending affection. We're so lucky, she said to the camera, that Mom's condition is stable. I smiled the way she expected. Soft, dazed, a little lost. But behind that smile, I carried a new kind of clarity. The pills in my hand were no longer symbols of weakness. They were tools, evidence, weapons. When she wasn't looking, I replaced the poisoned pills with harmless ones Dr. Patel had given me and started saving the originals in small glass vials, labeled, dated, documented. Each capsule was a confession, each swallow a performance. Good, I whispered that night, looking at my reflection in the dark window. Let them believe it's working. Because the truth was no longer something I sought. It was something I was building, and in the quiet between one heartbeat and the next, I smiled to myself. They wanted me weak, I said, but I've never been stronger. The projector came alive with a cough of light. Dust floated in the beam like ghosts of old applause. On the cracked screen, 1979 unfurled, sand, sweat, static, and the man behind the camera, Julian Carter. Back then, he was all edges and intent. A battlefield documentarian who stared at chaos until it blinked first. I used to call him my North Star in the smoke. He used to call me the woman who filmed like she was saving souls. The reel trembled, the old sound bled through. Julian's voice, young and reckless, filled the dark studio. One day, you'll have to choose family or truth. The screen flickered, then went black. The hum of the projector faded, leaving only the quiet breath of an old house and the pulse in my ears. I stared at the reflection of my own face in that blank frame. 72 years of choices, compromises, and carefully staged survival, and softly, I answered him. 30 years too late. I did, Julian, and I chose wrong. The decision came before I knew it had formed. I crossed the room to the old rotary phone, the one Andrew hadn't thought to disconnect because it wasn't smart. My hands didn't shake as I dialed the number that memory, somehow, had protected all these years. 3 rings, then the voice, aged but unmistakable, still textured with sand and cigarettes and something like faith. Julian Carter speaking. The air caught in my throat. Then I let it go. Julian, it's Eleanor Hayes. A pause. I could hear him exhale like he was letting go of 3 decades in a single breath. Eleanor, his voice softened. I was wondering if the world had finally taken you from me. Not yet, I said, but someone's trying. He didn't interrupt. Julian had always known when silence did the work better than words. I need a director, I said quietly. A director? For a film about betrayal. There was another long pause, the kind that means he already understands. You mean our last collaboration? No, I said, my last confession. He arrived 3 days later under the name Jay Carter, documentary consultant. No fanfare, no flowers, just a duffel bag of lenses and a mind that still saw truth in light and shadow. When he stepped into my home, the first thing he noticed wasn't the decor. It was the silence. You've been living inside a set, he murmured. Everything arranged for the camera, but none of it yours. I smiled thinly. You always did have an eye for mise en scène. We didn't embrace. We'd both outgrown sentimentality. Instead, I led him through the house, the controlled space of my captivity, and showed him the battleground. In the study, I placed 2 pill bottles on the desk between us. That's the plot, I said. He examined them the way he used to study confiscated footage, cautious, reverent. Someone's rewriting your script, he said. Exactly, and I intend to take back the final cut. That night, we planned the shoot. Under the guise of a legacy documentary, we'd record everything. Every conversation, every whisper, every act of manipulation. Julian would be the official director hired to film my career retrospective. Andrew would love that. Tessa would live stream it, and under their lenses, ours would be rolling. Quietly, persistently, truthfully. Julian sketched on a napkin like it was a storyboard. We'll use micro cameras, he said. 1 in each of these Art Deco sconces. Fiber runs under the wall seams. I'll hide audio transmitters in your typewriter. The sound of you working will cover any recording noise." I watched him work, and for a moment I remembered the man he'd been. Impossible, brilliant, slightly broken. "This could destroy them," he said. "It already has," I replied. "They just don't know it yet." He looked at me for a long time. "You're colder than you used to be." "No," I said. "Just focused. You taught me that." We talked until dawn, the two of us writing a story that would never screen at Sundance, but might one day play in a courtroom. Over the following weeks, Julian moved through my home like a ghost with a purpose. He installed cameras behind the molding, microphones under the marble countertop, transmitters disguised as decorative fixtures. He taught Nora how to handle backup drives, and she, in turn, taught him how to disappear from Tessa's live streams. To the outside world, we were two old filmmakers chasing nostalgia. To the real audience, us, this was production. One afternoon, while testing the sound levels in the kitchen, Julian looked at me over the monitor. "You know," he said, "you could still stop this. Turn them in quietly, let the courts do their work." "The courts can't capture what they did," I said, "but film can." He nodded once, slowly, like a soldier acknowledging an order he knows might get them both killed. We filmed the first scene that night, not a reenactment, not a lie. Just me, watching the old 1979 footage again, my reflection overlapping the younger me. The frame contained both versions, the woman who believed in mercy and the one who had finally learned precision. "Roll sound," Julian said softly. The camera light blinked red. "Eleanor," he prompted, "why now?" "Because truth doesn't wait," I said. "It decays, and I won't let them bury mine." He didn't respond. He just let the silence breathe, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to freedom. When Julian left that night, he paused at the doorway. "Be careful," he said. "Every revolution starts with a confession." I smiled faintly, fingers brushing the film reels beside me. "And every confession," I said, "needs a director." The door closed softly behind him, and the house exhaled. In the stillness, I turned to the nearest camera, one of ours, invisible to anyone else, and whispered, "They wanted a documentary about my decline. They'll get one, just not the version they planned." Julian said we needed another voice, someone who could speak truth without flinching, someone who knew what it meant to lose everything for asking the wrong questions. That's how Lydia Cross entered the frame. She'd once been the youngest investigative reporter on the West Coast. Sharp, relentless, allergic to compromise. Her career ended the day she followed the money trail of an environmental charity that led straight into Andrew's company portfolio. 2 days later, her contract was terminated due to restructuring. Andrew called it coincidence. Lydia called it censorship. When she walked into my old studio, she didn't shake my hand. She looked around at the aging film reels, the scent of dust and celluloid, the flicker of the old projector painting everything blue, and said quietly, "So this is where you're keeping your ghosts." "No," I told her. "This is where I'm raising them." Julian dimmed the lights. Nora brought tea. The four of us, an aging filmmaker, a war cameraman, a silenced journalist, and a housekeeper who knew too much, sat in a circle of dim blue glow. The film on the wall was blank. The projector was running, but there was no reel. Just light, cold, pure, waiting. That's when Lydia opened her notebook, the sound of the paper cutting through the hum. "You said you wanted exposure," she said. "Exposure is math, time, light, and focus. But what you really want is narrative. You want to turn your slow murder into story." Julian smiled faintly. "You learn fast." "I learned from watching people lose slower," she replied. She studied the pill bottles, the transaction logs, the photos of Tessa's fake caregiving live streams. Her eyes didn't blink. Her pen didn't stop. "You have evidence," she said, "but evidence without story is noise. You need a through line the public can follow, from poison to profit." She turned to me. "And you, Mrs. Hayes, are the through line." That was how Lens of Truth was born, our secret project hidden beneath the illusion of a documentary memoir. Julian would film. Nora would gather the small human details, timestamps, receipts, the way Andrew's tone changed when cameras were off. Lydia would handle the architecture of exposure, encrypted backups, off-site servers, contingency leaks. And me? I'd play my role. The confused mother, half lost, half forgiven, slowly crumbling for an audience that loved the sight of decay. "We'll film the liars," Lydia said, her voice low, steady, "until they see themselves." I watched her face under the projector's glow, half angel, half assassin. Truth does that to people. It takes the softness first. Over the next week, we rebuilt my house into a silent machine. Julian wired microphones into the floorboards and sconces. Lydia installed a private network hub beneath the editing desk. No cloud access, no traceable signal. Every conversation, every whisper, every misplaced kindness would now find its way to our archive. When Tessa came over for her nightly stream, she smiled into her phone. "Just another cozy evening with Mom. Say hi, everyone." She didn't know a camera hidden inside the bookshelf was recording her unfiltered reflection. The moment her smile dropped between sentences, the contempt that crawled across her face like a shadow that forgot its cue. After she left, Lydia reviewed the footage frame by frame, her voice tight. "You can't fake eyes like that," she said. "They already believe you're dying." "Then let's make sure they believe it all the way," I answered. By the second meeting, the team had shape. Julian's military precision, Lydia's analytical hunger, Nora's quiet devotion, and me. A woman who'd once documented wars and now lived inside one. We sat again in that studio, the light blue and soft, as if the ghosts had returned to listen. "When this goes public," Lydia said, "they'll call it elder abuse, fraud, maybe even attempted murder. But that's not the story we'll tell." "What story will we tell?" I asked. "The one they wrote themselves," she said. "We just show it back to them. Uncut." Julian adjusted the lens, his voice almost reverent. "Roll camera." I looked into that small, unblinking eye. Not the lens of pity, but of proof. And for the first time since my birthday, I felt alive again. Because in that moment, surrounded by the hum of machines and the people who still believed in truth, I understood something simple and absolute. Every act of cruelty begins as performance, and the only way to end it is to film until the mask breaks. It began with a gift. Andrew arrived one morning with a bouquet and a plastic smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Just some upgrades, Mom," he said. "For your safety." He moved through the house like a technician, unscrewing old fixtures, installing sleek black domes into corners, and smiling at Nora as if she were a ghost in his way. He called them monitors, but I knew a surveillance camera when I saw one. Julian's warning had come true. They were watching the watchers. That night, the red indicator lights blinked like quiet heartbeats across the house. Every one of them meant exposure, for us. Nora found me in the conservatory, her voice barely a whisper. "He wired the study, the kitchen, and your bedroom. I saw the feed going to his tablet before he left." "Then we clean," I said. "Tonight." The glass house at the back of the property, my sanctuary of orchids and forgotten film props, became our battlefield. Julian parked down the hill in his black sedan, headlights off. 1 blink meant clear. 2 meant delay. 3, danger. We waited. The house was breathing, floorboards contracting, pipes ticking, and those red eyes pulsing faintly in the dark. Nora worked fast, her hands steady despite the tremor of fear. She connected the external drive, found the feed directory Andrew had disguised as home care logs. Inside, time-stamped clips, sound-activated recordings, even a private folder labeled patient behavior. "He's documenting you," Nora murmured, "like a case study." "No," I said, "like a product demo." We began deleting, one file at a time, rerouting others into Julian's encrypted storage. The sound of the hard drive fan filled the silence, low, relentless like a heartbeat under the floor. Then, a noise. Car tires on gravel. Julian's message blinked on the tiny monitor beside me. 3 flashes. Danger. "He's back," I whispered. Nora froze. The progress bar read 71% copied. Outside, headlights washed across the glasshouse, cold white slicing through green. The orchids shivered in their pots, leaves trembling like witnesses. "We need 5 more minutes," Nora said. "We don't have one," I answered. Footsteps. The crunch of shoes on the path. Andrew's voice, muffled but close. "Mom? You awake? I thought I'd check your new cameras." My mind clicked into survival mode. "Turn off the main light," I said. "Leave only the reflection." The conservatory sank into a crimson haze from the small backup bulb, the emergency light we'd wired weeks ago for this exact possibility. The red glow smeared across the glass, painting everything like a bleeding film negative. Nora whispered, panicked. He'll see the feed is dead. No, I cut her off. He'll think it's buffering. Then I did the one thing Andrew would believe. I acted confused. When he opened the door, I was standing by the workbench, a watering can in my hand, staring at nothing. Mom? Oh, I forgot why I came out here, I murmured. His eyes darted to the table, searching for something incriminating. You shouldn't be up this late. I was looking for my cat. Nora, catching the cue, slipped behind the glass divider and made a soft meow. It was almost comical, a middle-aged woman imitating a cat in a house full of cameras. But it worked. Andrew relaxed, irritation replacing suspicion. You don't have a cat, Mom, he sighed. I know, I said, that's what worries me. He stared at me, then laughed. A cold, nervous sound. Get some sleep. I'll check the footage later. When he turned to leave, Nora mouthed silently, 95%. The final file was still uploading, a compressed folder Julian had marked Mirror 1. Andrew hesitated at the door, glancing back once. For a moment I thought he'd seen the flicker from the external drive's LED, but the red glow from the emergency light masked it perfectly. He left. The sound of his footsteps receded. The car engine started. The house exhaled. Nora slumped into a chair. I think I just aged 10 years. No, I said, unplugging the drive. We just took back 30. We watched the file open. Inside, a hidden feed from his office, timestamped 2 nights earlier. Andrew and Tessa were sitting across from each other, wine glasses between them, the camera angle low, probably from one of Julian's planted bugs. Tessa, so after the announcement, we list everything. The house, the archive, even the copyrights. Greenflare's already agreed to handle the auction. Andrew, good. Once she's gone, it all transfers automatically. No questions. He said it so casually. Once she's gone. As if my death were a calendar event. Hours later, I stood in my editing room, the drive plugged into the main console. The screen glowed white-blue, the cursor blinking like a pulse. Behind me, Nora sat in silence, her hands still trembling slightly from the near disaster. I pressed play. Their voices filled the room again, echoing off the walls I had designed for acoustics, not betrayal. The video ended. I stared at the frozen frame, my son's face, mid-sip, confident, unguarded. I turned toward the hidden lens Julian had left above the console, the one feeding into our archive. My reflection stared back, eyes hollow, mouth calm. Once she's gone, the house and copyrights transfer to Greenflare. I repeated softly. Then I faced the camera directly. Straight spine, steady voice. Scene 1, I said in evidence. The press conference was staged like a wedding. White orchids, frosted glass lectern, a backdrop that read, Care Community Continuity, in a font so clean it looked sterilized. This was the launch of Andrew's latest charity initiative, a halo built on sponsorships and hashtags. I was billed as the guest of honor, the legendary matriarch whose legacy inspires our mission. Tessa had set a ring light in the second row, angled just high enough to forgive gravity. She wore kindness like couture. We'll go live the moment you step up, she whispered, squeezing my arm. Say anything from the heart. We'll fix it in captions. I smiled, the kind you make when a camera asks for a soul. When they called my name, I walked to the lectern slowly, measured, 2 beats too long for comfort. Flashbulbs popped, phones rose. I placed both hands on the cool acrylic and let the room settle. Then I blinked as if noticing where I was for the first time. I forget, I said, letting the silence bloom. What's my award for again? A collective inhale, then the sound Tessa loves more than applause. Sympathy. She was at my side in a heartbeat, ring light now a halo, phone lifted to catch us both in a benevolent frame. It's okay, Mom, she cooed, the mic hot, the stream climbing. It's your lifetime impact recognition. We're so proud of you. I let my gaze wander, unfocused but gentle. Oh, yes. Of course. From the wings, Lydia filmed the entire exchange with her own lens. Wide, unflinching, including what Tessa's frame never would. The quick, practiced glance Tessa shot to confirm her viewer count, the tiny thumb swipe she did to pin a comment that read, "What an angel to care for her like this." No angel, I thought. An architect. Of hunger. I let the tremor in my right hand show as I reached for my water. The tremor I could control now that Dr. Patel had swapped the poison for harmless replicas. I took a sip, swallowed air, then smiled too brightly, the way people do when swallowed by a story not their own. Legacy, I said, tasting the word like a foreign fruit. Such a kind word. Lydia's camera slid to catch the donors in the front row, their softened faces, their checks already signed in their eyes. Behind them, Andrew stood with a clipboard, the boss of this benevolent factory, nodding at the optics like a man inventorying daylight. We rehearsed this, all of it. A question from a reporter. Ms. Hayes, are you involved in the Institute's direction? I tilted my head as if the words required translation. Direction? I echoed, and then let the light drain from my face just enough for Tessa to step in. We handle logistics, she said, sweet steel. Eleanor rests. She's earned it. The room loved her for it. Lydia's camera loved the room for loving her. Behind the stage curtain, Julian tracked audio levels. A microphone buried in the lectern captured the small things, the way Tessa's breath shortened when I missed a beat, the way Andrew whispered, "Good girl," when he thought the boom operator had moved on. Nora, in the aisle, counted seconds between my forgettings, matching them to the rhythm we'd practiced. Not too often. Never the same word twice. Enough to suggest drift. Not enough to prove disease. On screen, the live stream glittered. Hearts rose like bright, brainless fish. After the staged stumble, my speech lasted 2 minutes and 39 seconds. Gratitude, deflection, and a quote from my earliest film. A good edit, soft and bland. The Q&A ended. The donors exhaled relief. The MC announced a private signing of legacy documents in the green room. That part wasn't public. It was the point. Noah Green, my attorney, waited with a leather folio and a face made for courtrooms. He had been working nights with our filing team while Andrew slept the sleep of the righteous. 2 signatures, 3 recorded acknowledgments, and a notarized transfer later, every asset tied to my work, property, reels, contracts, digital rights, belonged irrevocably to the Hayes Margaret Institute. Not to me. Not to any heir. To a governed entity with bylaws that made family interference a legal impossibility. Andrew skimmed the first page and relaxed at the word institute. He didn't read the bylaws. He rarely read anything that wasn't an audience report. Just standard legacy alignment, Noah said mildly. Keeps everything in one place for branding. Branding. The sacrament he trusts. Tessa angled her phone low to film the pen touching paper. This is so special, she murmured. A moment we'll all remember. You won't, I thought. Not like I will. Noah's hand tapped twice on the margin, our signal. The live recording we'd started under the lectern was safe. The witnesses were in frame. The notary's seal gleamed like a small, mechanical sun. We cleared the green room in under 10 minutes. Outside the door, Andrew kissed the top of my head like a man reassuring his favorite investment. Proud of you, Mom, he said. Let's get you home. I let my eyes shine. Weakness is a currency. Spend it where it buys time. In the car, Tessa edited the footage in-app, splicing my moment of confusion into a 15-second miracle of compassion. Caption, When Love Remembers for You. Within minutes, it had 100,000 views. From the back seat, I watched Los Angeles scroll by like an old film. Grainy, overexposed, saturated with the wrong kind of light. Lydia's text arrived as we hit the canyon. Transfer complete. Institute recorded. Vault live. A second message. Your forgetting was perfect. His guard is down. I turned my face to the window and let the passing neon paint my reflection in stripes. The role fit better than I liked to admit. There was a comfort in surrendering to the script, right until I remembered I had written it. At home. Andrew walked me to the door. No more stress tonight, he said. We'll go over some paperwork tomorrow. Simple stuff. Simple. He would bring forms I would struggle to parse. He would offer to hold them for me. He would feel magnanimous while tightening his grip. Tomorrow, I echoed, and squeezed his hand as if grateful for the leash. They left. The house exhaled, the ring lights went dark. In the studio, the projector's blue came up as if the wall itself had missed me. Julian rolled his chair close, eyes on the audio track. Nora locked the outer door. Lydia opened her notebook. It's done, Noah said from the speaker, voice crisp. Filed, countersigned, time-stamped, redundant copies stored. If he contests, he loses. I sat at my desk and opened the stream replay. The part where I blanked was already clipped, captioned, adored. The part where the Institute became untouchable did not exist online. It existed in law. Did we push too far? Nora asked softly. Not far enough, Lydia replied. He thinks she's fading. He'll make mistakes to prove it. I watched myself on screen, soft, uncertain, the edges of my mouth behaving like someone else's. Then I minimized the window and looked into one of our hidden lenses. The small red LED winked, patient and faithful. They wanted the world to see me fall apart, I said quietly. Let them. The slower I fall in public, the faster we build the truth. A message from Julian popped up on the monitor. Playback clean, no artifacts, tomorrow we escalate. I nodded to the empty room and to the audience that didn't know it had already chosen a side. Andrew trusted optics. Tessa trusted sympathy. I trusted the record. And tonight the record belonged to me. The nursing home was too bright. Light shouldn't be that clean when it guards decay. The air smelled like lemon and bleach, like someone was trying to scrub away guilt. I came to see Richard Samuels, my old neighbor. He used to spend weekends repainting his porch, humming Sinatra off-key, waving when I came home late from editing. The kind of man who made ordinary days look safe. Now he was a shadow in room 214. His eyes flickered when I spoke his name. Half of his face was still, the other half trying to remember how to exist. A line of drool ran down his chin. A nurse dabbed it gently, the way you dust a photo you no longer expect to move. I sat beside him. His TV played a wildlife documentary, elephants crossing dry earth, but the volume was off. The irony was unbearable. We used to make films about survival. Now, survival was a chore. I noticed the pills on his tray, small, chalk white, stamped with a number I knew too well. These, I whispered, touching the cup. Who prescribed them? A young nurse looked up from her chart. Her name tag read Claire Samuels. The surname hit first, then her eyes, the same gray-blue as Richard's, but awake, wary. You're his neighbor, she said quietly. He mentioned you once. You made movies. I did, I said. Now I'm making something else. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. He's on the same medication Dr. Keene gives everyone over 70. Same dosage, no matter their condition. Everyone? He calls it a standard cognitive stabilizer. Her tone flattened on the word standard. My stomach tightened. That was the same pill I'd been given, the one that blurred days into watercolor and replaced my strength with silence. He prescribed that to me too, I said, years ago, my son's idea. Claire froze. Your son's name isn't Andrew Hayes, is it? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She left for a moment, then returned with a folded envelope tucked under a cafeteria napkin. I shouldn't be showing you this, she said, but something's wrong. I've been keeping records, quietly. Inside were scanned files, photocopies, death reports. 3 patients, different nursing homes, same doctor, same pills, same final note on each chart, decline consistent with advanced dementia. Only one problem. None of them had been diagnosed with dementia before Keene's treatment. Claire pointed to the numbers typed neatly across the margins. Look at the dosage, she whispered. It never changes. My grandfather weighs 160 pounds. One of those women barely weighed 90. He prescribes it like clockwork. It's easier to manage people who can't remember they're angry. Her voice trembled, but her hands didn't. I could see the kind of fury that builds in quiet people, the kind that doesn't burn but corrodes. I looked back at Richard. His breathing was shallow, steady, mechanical, like an edit loop, stuck on the same 3 seconds of footage. He met my eyes briefly. Something old flickered there. Recognition, or maybe instinct. Neighbor, he murmured. I squeezed his good hand. Still, I said softly, still your neighbor. Claire blinked fast, fighting tears. If I send you everything I have, will you do something with it? Yes, I said, I'll make sure people see. Then I'll risk it. She slipped a USB drive into my palm, wrapped in a latex glove. The system logs every patient's meds, every time it's administered. I pulled copies from the network. Keene's name is on all of them. And your name? Nowhere, she said. Please keep it that way. I filmed the room before I left. Not faces, just fragments. The steady pulse of a heart monitor, the hum of the oxygen machine, the red glow of the emergency light reflecting in the chrome railing. In the distance, a nurse laughed. High, brittle, rehearsed. Over it, I whispered into the recorder, "They call this care. I call it the extinguishing of memory." It wasn't performance anymore. It was indictment. When I reached my car, the USB felt heavier than metal should. I called Lydia. "We're not dealing with a family plot," I told her. "It's an industry." "How bad?" she asked. "Keen's using the same prescription formula across multiple facilities. Same dose, same results." "And the results?" "People who stop asking questions." There was a pause. Then Lydia said, "Send me everything. I'll cross-check medical records with death certificates. If the pattern holds, we can prove criminal negligence, maybe worse." "And Claire?" "We protect her," she said. "No one touches the whistleblower." Julian was next. He listened without interrupting. Then he said simply, "Bring the footage. We'll build the sequence around it. This isn't just your story anymore, Eleanor. It's theirs too." Back in my studio, Nora set 2 cups of tea beside the editing console. I imported the clips, the mechanical pulse, the pills, Richard's trembling hand. On the wall, the projected image bathed us in the same sterile light that filled his room. "How many do you think?" Nora asked. "Enough to call it policy," I said. I synced the video with my voiceover, layering it over the sound of breathing machines and fluorescent hum. "They call it care. I call it the extinguishing of memory. And in the silence, they profit." When the playback ended, the room stayed dark. The screen glowed faintly as a square of witness. I saved the project under a new name, The System Sequence, for public release. Then I whispered mostly to myself, "This was never just about my son. This is about a generation being erased. Quietly, efficiently, profitably." The city outside flickered with distant sirens. Somewhere another pill cup was being filled. Somewhere another memory was being managed. But here, in the blue pulse of my studio, the truth was awake, and it had started recording. Half a pill. That was the price of staying believable. If I refused the medication entirely, Andrew would sense the performance. If I kept taking it, I would become the woman they needed me to be. Silent, confused, convenient. So I compromised with poison. Every morning I sat under the yellow light of my studio lamp, blade in hand, slicing the tablet cleanly down the middle. Half swallowed, half hidden. The ritual of resistance disguised as compliance. Dr. Patel warned me, "You're playing with your nervous system, Eleanor. You can't predict which memories it will steal." I smiled, the kind of smile you give someone who still believes rules protect the righteous. "Then I'll film what I forget." The fog came quietly, not as thunder or madness, but as a soft rearranging of certainty. Time became elastic. Mornings arrived twice. Afternoons dissolved mid-sentence. Once I woke in the laundry room at 3 a.m., folding a towel I didn't remember washing. Another time I stood outside the house with my car keys but no car, convinced the city had misplaced the street. The cameras recorded everything. At least one of us should remember. Julian watched me fade and fought the impulse to fix me. He was the only one who understood that truth sometimes needs deterioration to look convincing. It was dusk when he found me again, sitting in the darkened studio, watching a film I didn't remember threading. The Silent River, 1982. The projector painted the room in trembling light. On the screen, a silver current winding through mist. The sound of wind, of young laughter. Mine. The woman in the frame was 27, barefoot in the water, laughing as if conviction were oxygen. Julian's voice from another lifetime cut through the reel. "One day you'll have to choose Ellie, family, or truth." On screen, I splashed him playfully, shouting something the microphone never caught. Off screen, 40 years later, I whispered into the hum, "Was it worth it, Julian?" Behind me, the real Julian stopped breathing for a moment. Then softly, "If you forget everything, what's left of us?" I turned. His face was raw, grief and patience shaped into something almost holy. I wanted to tell him I still remembered the way he held a camera. Steady, reverent, as if light itself needed protection. But words were becoming heavy things, so I just said, "The camera remembers." He laughed once, then covered his mouth as if laughter were treason. A tear slid down the line between past and present. We sat together, two ghosts watching our younger selves make promises time had already broken. The half-dose began its slow climb through my bloodstream. The familiar drift, the gentle theft. My vision blurred, sharpened, blurred again. I reached for the desk and missed it by an inch. Julian caught my elbow before gravity could win. "Sit," he said. "I am," I whispered. "I think." He crouched beside me, eyes searching mine, for the woman he'd once known, or maybe for the truth I was still protecting. "You're walking a thin line, Ellie," he said quietly. "If the performance becomes real, if the line disappears, promise me you'll tell me." I looked at him. The man who once filmed wars now filming me, another battlefield. "I'll tell you," I said, "after we have enough evidence to make forgetting unnecessary." He closed his eyes, exhaled through pain. "That's not how forgetting works." I turned back to the reel. For a few seconds the film glitched, and the river flowed backward. Water defying gravity, memory defying time. I laughed softly. "Even the past gets confused," I said. Julian didn't laugh. He reached over, corrected the reel, and guided my hand to the switch. "Your film," he murmured. "Your choice." The current returned to normal, but my heartbeat didn't. Later that night, after he left, I dictated a new log entry into my phone, a message to the future version of myself who might not remember this moment. Half-dose functional. Disorientation, 6 to 9 minutes. Temporal drift present but manageable with cues. Upside. Andrew satisfied by public lapses. Tessa more reckless. Downside. Performance increasingly persuasive, including to subject. I ended the recording and stared at the red blinking dot. It looked like a heartbeat refusing to fade. Sleep came unevenly, like bad editing. I dreamed in overlapping frames, Richard's trembling hand, Claire's whisper over the pills, Tessa's ring light reflecting in Andrew's eyes, the river running backward, the boy laughing, Julian's voice saying, "Oka, stay with me," and then static. When I opened my eyes, it was morning, or maybe another scene pretending to be morning. Nora brought tea. Lydia texted 3 new patient names tied to Dr. Keene. Donovan confirmed the offshore accounts were frozen. Julian sent me a still frame from last night's recording, me and him, silhouettes against the ghost of the river. Under it, his message read, "The footage is beautiful, painfully beautiful. We're close." I stared at it for a long time, trying to decide whether I remembered that version of myself. The woman in the photo looked steady, composed. I wasn't sure she still existed. That evening I stood before the mirror in my bedroom, the one Andrew insisted on keeping for sentimental value. The reflection studied me like an understudy waiting for her cue. Was I still acting? Or had the role consumed the actress? The line was thinner than I'd planned. Memory, performance, truth, all identical under the same lighting. I pressed record again, whispering for the camera, my most faithful witness. They wanted a woman losing her mind. And now I can't tell if they've succeeded. Silence. Then I smiled, faint, deliberate, because every film needs an ending, even if it's not the real one. I no longer know if I'm acting or truly forgetting. 1 year later, the Avalon Theater looked exactly as it had the night everything began, only this time the illusion belonged to me. Andrew and Tessa had outdone themselves. They directed every moment of the evening as if they were producing a film about devotion and legacy. They even called it a celebration of Eleanor Hayes, A Life in Light. Spotlights shimmered against the gilded balconies. The red carpet smelled faintly of roses and ambition. Every reporter was here, architecture, cinema, culture, philanthropy. They wanted headlines of reconciliation, not reckoning. But I came for the latter. When the curtain opened, Andrew stood center stage, tuxedo crisp, voice smooth as glass. "Tonight we honor not only my mother's 50 years of work," he said, "but her endless spirit of creativity." Applause rose like machinery. Cameras flashed. Tessa smiled from the wings, her hand pressed to her heart, the image of pride and grace. Then they called my name. I stepped into the light, hair silver, pinned high, black gown with a high collar, eyes steady, unflinching. The audience murmured. They expected the fragile woman from the last gala. Instead, they saw the architect of their illusions. "Before I thank anyone," I began, voice calm, controlled, "I'd like to show a short film, my final project." A small ripple of confusion. Andrew frowned just slightly. Tessa's phone lifted. She was already streaming. The screen behind me flared to life. At first, it looked like a simple documentary montage. The familiar tones of my voice, clips of my old films, charity work, studio stills. Then, abruptly, the footage cut to grainy black and white security video, time-stamped. My living room, my son's voice. Andrew. Once she's gone, the Institute's ours. Keen said her heart won't last long. Tessa, soft laugh. I already have plans for her office. It'll make a perfect showroom. The theater froze. The applause died mid-breath. Even the cameras hesitated, as if the air itself had forgotten how to move. Then came the next clip, a shot of my hand trembling as I placed pills under my tongue, secretly recording. Dr. Patel's voice entered over the image. Eleanor, you're not suffering from dementia. You're being chemically sedated. Whispers rippled like insects through the velvet dark. Julian had edited the film with surgical precision, every reveal hitting like a heartbeat. Each clip followed the other. Financial statements from Donovan. Video of Tessa, rehearsing her fake compassion for live streams. The scene in the greenhouse, red light, mirror reflections, Andrew's voice whispering, the transfer papers are ready. Then, Richard Samuels in the hospital bed, his nurse Claire's testimony, the identical pills, Dr. Keen's prescription pattern appearing on screen beside obituaries, every victim's name, every date, a system laid bare, care turned to commerce, medicine turned to manipulation, and finally a title card appeared, directed by Eleanor Hayes, produced by The Truth. The lights rose. The silence broke like glass. Andrew stood, eyes wide, face drained of color. What is this? My last film, I said. The only one that mattered. He took a step forward, fury tightening his jaw. You're humiliating your own family. No, I replied, I'm rebuilding it, with truth. From the side aisle, a woman in a gray suit appeared, Assistant District Attorney Olivia Park. Her badge flashed once, briefly, before she signaled toward the exits. Two plainclothes detectives entered quietly. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. The evidence had already spoken. Mr. Hayes, Olivia said evenly, you are under investigation for attempted elder abuse, medical fraud, and financial conspiracy. Dr. Keen is already in custody. Ms. Clark, you'll accompany us as well. The audience erupted, not in cheers, not in protest, but in disbelief. Tessa shook her head, backing away. You can't do this. It's a misunderstanding. We took care of her. Olivia gestured, and the second screen flickered back to life. Split screen. Tessa's live streams beside raw, behind-the-scenes footage. Her rehearsed sympathy mirrored against the smirk that followed when cameras stopped. The contrast was surgical, devastating. Andrew lunged forward, voice cracking. She's delusional. She's sick. Ask her doctor. We did, Olivia replied. The real one. Dr. Patel rose from the front row, calm, composed, holding the signed affidavit. The crowd turned, recognition dawning like a slow storm. Flashbulbs erupted, the line between witness and spectator dissolved. Andrew looked at me, not as a son, not even as an enemy, but as a man seeing his own obituary written in light. You planned this, he said quietly. I designed it, I answered. Like every structure, from the foundation up. Tessa clutched her phone. You'll destroy everything we built. Then it wasn't built to last. Olivia motioned to the officers. They guided them out, no handcuffs yet, just consequence wrapped in civility. The crowd parted in silence. The only sound was the relentless clicking of cameras. When they reached the doors, Andrew turned back. You wanted legacy. This is what you'll be remembered for, tearing your family apart. No, I said, voice steady, for ending a performance that went on too long. The lights dimmed again, a final frame filled the screen, white text on black, for the ones they said we're forgetting. We remember. The audience didn't applaud. They stood, uncertain, reverent, stunned. Somewhere in the back, someone whispered, she turned her life into evidence. I walked off stage. Julian waited in the wings, eyes wet, camera lowered. Lydia stood beside him, hands trembling from adrenaline, whispering, we did it, Ellie. It's on every feed. They can't spin it now. They don't have to spin it, I said softly. The truth will. Outside, sirens wailed like applause from a distant city. The Avalon's neon sign flickered above us, the same blue that had lit my humiliation a year ago. Tonight, it lit my deliverance. Julian reached for my hand. You ready for the world to see it? I already have, I said. It's in the room. We stood there for a long moment, the sound of flashbulbs echoing through the lobby like 1,000 camera shutters opening and closing, as if the truth itself were breathing again. And when the final police car disappeared into the Los Angeles night, I whispered the only words that felt right. Scene 2, complete. Now, justice rolls. By morning, the story had detonated across every screen. What had once been family gossip was now a headline that glowed on every feed, every paper stand, every TV scroll. Eco couple accused of elder fraud and drugging mother. Clipped words, no adjectives, no pity. News anchors spoke my name with the reverence they once saved for saints, or for scandal. Tessa's smiling portraits from charity galas appeared beside booking photos. Andrew's confident speeches about sustainability replayed under the caption, "Under federal investigation." Dr. Keene was led from his clinic in a wrinkled white coat, the stethoscope swinging like a symbol of everything broken. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. The cameras were already doing the looking for him. Claire, the nurse, Richard's granddaughter, sent a message before dawn. She had found 3 more patient files, each identical to mine. Same dosage, same prescription signature, same slow erasure. 3 elderly patients, all pronounced cognitive decline, all dead within months. He prescribed the same compound to everyone over 70, she said, voice trembling over the phone. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The case grew overnight from one woman's nightmare to a federal investigation. The Department of Justice requested full access to Lydia's footage, Donovan's financial records, and Dr. Patel's lab reports. It was no longer personal revenge. It was systemic justice. Julian found me standing by the window, robe loosely tied, watching the headlines ripple across the morning news. He turned the volume down, gently. The silence between us felt cleaner than the noise outside. It's happening, he said quietly. Yes, I replied, but justice is never as loud as the crime. Outside the Avalon Theater, cameras had been camped overnight, turning the marble steps into a battlefield of microphones. As we left through the service door, the morning light was gray and merciless. Julian shielded me from the flash storm with his coat. A young reporter, maybe 25, broke from the pack, voice trembling more than mine ever had. Ms. Hayes, one question. What's your message to other victims like you? I paused, breath clouding in the cool air, and met her eyes, not the lens. Film everything, I said. Lies hate evidence. She lowered the mic, her expression shifting from curiosity to understanding. That was all I needed to see. Julian guided me toward the car. The police cordon buzzed. From the alley, the echo of shutters clicked like applause from ghosts. At home, the air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, Nora's quiet form of devotion. Lydia sat by the television, scrolling through live coverage, her face illuminated by the glow of headlines. They've frozen Andrew's accounts, she murmured. Keene's been denied bail. Tessa's gone offline completely. I nodded, but my hands wouldn't stay still. The tremor, small, persistent, traced its own rhythm on the tabletop. A dry cough followed, sharp enough to make Julian glance over. Side effects, I whispered. Scars, he corrected. Even healed wounds still itch. By evening, every major network was dissecting my film, frame by frame. The clip of Andrew's voice whispering, "Once she's gone," had been replayed so many times that even strangers could quote it. The footage Lydia had edited, my trembling hands, the pills, the camera's quiet witness, became a symbol. They called it the Hayes Record. Commentators debated ethics and legacy, but survivors wrote letters. Hundreds of them. Women, men, children of forgotten parents, all saying the same thing. We saw what happened. It happened to us too. I printed each one, not to keep, but to remember that the story was never mine alone. Later that night, Julian and I sat in the studio, once the center of my deception, now the heart of my resurrection. Outside, the city buzzed with new scandals, but ours had already settled into the bloodstream of truth. They'll call it victory, Julian said softly. It isn't, I replied. It's maintenance. He looked at me, the faint lines of exhaustion on my face, the tremor in my right hand still betraying every emotion my voice refused to show. "You're still shaking," he said. "Justice isn't anesthesia," I answered. "It just keeps you awake." Before midnight, Olivia Park called. "Federal charges confirmed," she said. "The case will proceed under elder protection and medical fraud statutes. You started something bigger than you know." I thanked her, hung up, and stood by the window. The moonlight washed over my reflection, the face of a woman who had survived both poison and pity. I whispered mostly to myself, "They tried to make me forget." Instead, I remembered everything. Julian watched quietly as I picked up my old camera, the same one that had caught the first whisper of betrayal, and pressed record one last time. "Case log," I said softly. "Day 1 of recovery. Justice begins. Tremor steady. Breath intact. Message to anyone listening. Record the truth. Because lies hate evidence." The red light blinked once, steady, alive. Outside, the sirens faded. Inside, my hand trembled, but the frame never shook. The house no longer felt like a crime scene. A year after the trial, its echo had changed. Where microphones once caught betrayal, now they caught learning. Hesitant, hopeful, messy. Eleanor's old home, the Art Deco mansion in West Hollywood, had been transformed into the Hayes Margaret Institute, a nonprofit center for media ethics and documentary truth-telling. The sign at the entrance read, "For those they silenced, we listen." Below it, in smaller font, "Founded by Eleanor Hayes, 2026. The foyer smelled of film reels and coffee. Walls once lined with family portraits now displayed frames from documentaries students had made. Rough, powerful stories. A migrant mother filming her son's first school day. A veteran speaking to his reflection. A nurse documenting silence in a dementia ward. In the corner, a plaque read, "The lens doesn't forget. It redeems." Nora, the once silent housekeeper, now walked through the halls with a badge that read Director of Operations. Her movements carried calm authority. Everyone, from tech interns to visiting journalists, called her Ms. Nora now. She still made tea for Eleanor each morning, but she also negotiated sponsorship deals and managed course budgets with the precision of a film editor. Lydia Cross, now professor of ethical documentary, taught in the converted screening room, Eleanor's former studio, where betrayal had once been captured on camera. Rows of students filled the small theater, faces lit by blue projector light, notebooks open. Eleanor sat quietly in the back row, her cane leaning against the chair. Her right hand still trembled slightly, but her eyes burned with purpose. She no longer spoke to an audience of lawyers or prosecutors. Today, she spoke to the next generation of truth-tellers. Lydia began class with a simple question written on the whiteboard. Can truth hurt and still be right? A young student raised her hand. Her name was Ava, 20, sharp-eyed, fresh from the foster care system. She had a second-hand camera and a history of running before she could explain herself. If truth hurts, Ava asked, should we still show it? The class turned to Eleanor instinctively. She smiled faintly, stood with care, and walked toward the front. Always, Eleanor said softly, pain fades, lies don't. Truth isn't cruelty, it's a cure. The wound comes first, the healing after. Silence hung for a long moment. Then Ava nodded slowly, the way people nod when they've just been handed something they'll carry for life. Eleanor spent afternoons in the editing lab, reviewing students' projects. One veteran named Miguel brought a rough cut titled The War After Home, an experimental film about living with PTSD. His voice cracked when he said, I don't know if it's any good. Eleanor replied, if it's honest, it's already better than good. In another room, a retired teacher named Mr. Ansel learned to film his trembling hands kneading bread dough. It's for her, he said, showing a photo of his late wife. Eleanor smiled. Then it's not a film, it's a monument. Each student was a mirror, fractured, luminous, truthful, and Eleanor, walking among them, saw fragments of herself in every story they told. One afternoon, sunlight spilled across the wooden floors as Lydia stayed late in the editing suite. She was cataloging old drives from the Hayes archive when she found something mislabeled, almost hidden behind a corrupted file. Lens, of truth, part unknown, move. She froze. The file date, 2 months ago. The sender, anonymous. Lydia called Eleanor and Nora into the room. They watched the file load. Static first, then clarity. A hospice worker appeared on screen, her face blurred, whispering, "They're still doing it. Different clinics, same drug, same foundation, green flares, new branch." The footage cut to a spreadsheet of elderly patients, dosage logs, bank transfers, the same pattern repeating. Julian's voice broke the silence. He had arrived moments earlier, camera still slung across his shoulder. "It didn't end with them," he murmured. "It multiplied." Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the mouse. "Then we keep going," she said. "Every lie leaves a sequel." Weeks later, the Institute launched a new student initiative, Lens of Truth, Second Wave, a mentorship program pairing journalism students with survivors of media abuse, medical fraud, and elder exploitation. The motto, printed in quiet gray letters on every student badge, "When someone tells their story, they take back control." Eleanor watched from the back row of the new auditorium, the same space where she once revealed her son's betrayal to the world. Now, laughter filled it. Projectors flickered, not with evidence, but with art. She whispered to herself, "They wanted me to forget. But forgetting was never my talent. Remembering was." As the lights dimmed, Lydia approached with a flash drive. "There's more footage," she said softly. "Whoever sent it wants us to finish what we started." Eleanor smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the lips, only the eyes. She turned to the camera on the tripod, still recording, always recording. "Roll camera," she said. "Truth doesn't retire." The red light blinked once, steady. And somewhere beyond the Institute's walls, another story waited for its turn to be told. The night came quietly, like a camera shutter closing between scenes. The Institute was asleep, only the editing bay lights still breathing. That's when Nora slid the envelope beneath my door. No return address, just the flat gray of prison stationery and my son's careful handwriting. I didn't open it right away. The air smelled of rain on dust, and I thought maybe I'd let the letter wait. But letters like that never really wait. They hum, they breathe, they stare, so I broke the seal. Inside, his words were neat, deliberate, the same precision he once used to fake compassion. "You've won, but you'll die alone, surrounded by reals, not family." No signature, no apology, just a sentence sharp enough to bleed the paper. I laid it flat on the desk. The lamp caught half my face, one side gold, one side shadow. I could see both women, the one who raised him and the one who stopped him. They were finally the same person. Outside, Los Angeles pulsed, 1,000 lights pretending to be stars. The city had always been my accomplice, too bright to sleep, too loud to mourn. Now it just watched. Julian's reflection appeared in the window before his voice did. "You still filming?" I turned toward the silent camera on the tripod. The red light was off, but the lens still glimmered, waiting. "No," I said. "Living." He smiled, that small, knowing half-smile of a man who's seen me rebuild myself more times than gravity allows. He came closer, glancing at the letter, but not asking. That's what love looks like after survival. Presence without intrusion. We sat by the open terrace. The wind carried the hum of the freeway, the soft wail of a siren somewhere east, the city breathing in stereo. From here, the skyline looked like a film reel, each light a single frame from a story that refused to end. "Do you ever think about him?" Julian asked. "I used to," I said. "Now I think about what made him possible." He nodded, eyes following a helicopter tracing circles over downtown. "Systems," he murmured. "Yes," I said. "And the people who profit when mothers stop paying attention." I stood, crossing to the bookshelf. Between archives and award plaques sat a small glass paperweight, a single frozen iris. I placed Andrew's letter beneath it. The lamp's glow refracted through the glass, bending his words into something softer, almost merciful. "He thinks I'm alone," I said quietly. "You're not," Julian answered. "No," I said. "But even if I were, I'd rather be alone with truth than surrounded by people who call their lies love." He didn't argue. He never does. Some conversations only need silence to finish. Below, the city continued its endless audition for forgiveness. I thought of Nora locking up the editing lab, of Lydia checking the next day's lesson plans, of Ava and Miguel and the others, young, reckless, brave, stitching truth together one frame at a time. Family wasn't blood. It was light. Refracted, imperfect, but alive. Julian leaned against the railing, the street glow cutting soft amber lines across his face. "You know," he said, I think the film ended the day you decided to live. No, I said, a smile curling at the edge of my voice. It just changed directors. We laughed quietly, the kind of laugh you only earn when the war is finally over. I walked back to my desk. The folder lay open. The next project, Urban Lens Project, Phase 2, blueprints, outreach plans, clinic partnerships, a map of light stretching further than I ever dared before. The camera still stood in the corner, patient as a witness. I pressed its power button. The lens adjusted, humming to life. Through its screen I saw what it saw. The lamp, the letter, Julian's silhouette framed by the city's glow. A composition of endings and beginnings. I didn't hit record. I didn't need to. In the end, justice wasn't revenge. It was focus. And when the frame is clear, truth appears.